Something crawls out of the ocean towards my beach house at night. I found out what the thing truly is. Something crawls out of the ocean at night. Whatever the thing is, it slithers along gray sand towards my beach house. Its eyes are like two candles with red outlines. Its form is humanoid, but the skin color is a viscous green and blue. The face is that of two flaps with the same texture of leather. Thus far, it has never failed to make direct eye contact with me. It locks eyes with me when I crouch below my window pane and peer out at it through the blinds I have peeled open. When I am on the balcony staring out at it from only 2 dozen feet away, it still focuses its gaze upon me. My encounters with the creature usually always ended the same way. Once it observed my form, it would turn around and go back into the waters. There was no wave or froth left behind in its plunge. The piece of land my house sits on does not have any other occupied houses. I do not stay there year-round because sometimes my job requires travel. Every night I am in the comfortable domicile, the underwater thing chooses to emerge. It goes out of its way to make its presence known to me. There is a lighthouse to the right of my estate. It sits on an outcropping which is only half a mile away from my vacation residency. One night, after the abomination made its visit, I looked around to see if there were any other witnesses. All I could see was an individual in khaki shorts standing near the lighthouse. I went back into my place. I grabbed my pistol and stuffed it in my pants pocket in case the unusual being would try and stalk me. I walked towards the towering beacon. When I was within inches of the man, I got his attention with a hello. I tried to watch my tone so as not to startle him. I like to jet ski around these parts after smoking a joint, he said as he put his hands in the air. If I'm not welcome here, I'll move on. I'm not patrolling, I said. Nor am I law enforcement. I'm a homeowner. I'm wondering if you saw anything unusual within the last half hour. No, he said as he tilted his head to the side and looked at me with a quizzical expression. I've been hearing things out here the last few months, though. The sound of someone screaming. I've even searched the water looking for anyone who may need help, but I haven't found anybody. It's the same voice every time, the noise of someone drowning. I even pulled out my phone and recorded it. Would you like to hear it? I nodded. He retrieved his device and played the audio. It was the sound of a man crying for help before the ocean engulfed him. I waited for nightfall on the veranda. As the moon became brighter in the sky, I held my phone at the ready and pointed at the seascape's expanse. I lay in my hammock. I had a radio station on in the background, though I did not avert my eyes from the ocean. My conversation with the stranger had given me the idea of attempting to capture the anomaly. I wanted to do it via digital film. My irrefutable proof would allow me to take some kind of further action. I could then reach out to animal control with a helpful bit of information. I hoped they knew something about the monster I did not. Even if it was the knowledge the general public was not privy to, I would be grateful for the aid. The stars reflected off the glass-like surface of the aquatic fields before me. A strong smell of driftwood overcame me as I looked past the lighthouse at the line of coastal trees. Their spindly limbs swayed with the wind. I saw a ripple that seemed out of place with the rest of the miles of water in front of me. I stood and made my way down the rickety wooden stairs to the sand. I saw its head emerge like an ascending periscope of a submarine. Its crimson-hued orbs pierced me. What perturbed me more was its stillness. It floated, a participant in some sort of wide-eyed meditation with me as its central subject. What made me uneasy was how it viewed me as an alien. I stared down at the app which was open, the camera option. I went to hit the record feature. Before I could, something grabbed my ankles. Something pulled me towards the ocean. I looked down at my feet and saw ropes of seaweed thicker than forest vines tighten around my ankles. They also dragged me away from my home. I tried to stop my kidnapping by burying my hand on the beach. I went to grab onto anything, but it was to no avail, as it pulled me under. An undertow seemed to carry me. A pier was in the distance. While I wanted to scream for help in case anyone was there, I knew I had to conserve energy. I anticipated a fight. I looked at the light tower, and no one was there. I managed to take in a large gulp of air and hold it before my head was completely submerged. I looked down and saw the seaweed dissipate. I swam back to the top and looked around to see if the creature would make a surprise appearance. He was nowhere in sight. I swam to the shoreline and ran into my house. My phone was in the depths, lost forever. When I awoke in the morning, I was sore all over. The struggle had left my muscles tense. I thought of what my options were for self-defense. If this had been a normal type of human nuisance, there were friends I could have called for support. They would have helped me rough him up so he would learn his lesson. Yet I have had the sense deep in my stomach that this thing could not have been one of our kind. I knew if I were to go to anyone and try to explain what I had seen, they would send me to an insane asylum. I would never see the light of day again. I went online and purchased an underwater oxygen respirator. I also went to the nearest tactical army surplus store and bought a blade. I was not happy with the size of it. I reached out to a Marine friend of mine who allowed me to buy one of his car bars. I waited for the next nightfall. The brine smell was strong when I went out onto my balcony again to stare out at the abyss. I put the respirator on and kept the knife on my forearm in a bracer. I suspected that my opponent would not be intelligent enough to see how I was ready for him this time. Tendrils of seaweed once again clamped down on my feet. They swirled around almost in a theatrical show. They were like two vipers dancing to a flute before they dragged me under. I cut them apart once I was 30 feet down. I kept the blade close to my chest with one hand. I spun around looking for him. Everything seemed peaceful in total blackness. A Kaunos ray swam by. Something gripped my shoulders before it slid around my throat. Pressure tightened in a fraction of a second. I reversed the blade and thrust it by my side in the hopes of connecting. It did. The creature's grip loosened, and I turned around to see that I had stabbed the rib cartilage of the thing. Still, it did not give up. Its face opened into a hideous mass of flowering aquatic insects. A human face revealed itself. It was also one I recognized. So familiar. It raised its hand and swiped me. The mask came off. I felt as though I was drowning immediately. I tried to go to the surface. I felt its palms press down on my feet, but I checked it right in the center of its ugly maw. Everything went dark. I awoke on the deck of a ship. Men, auxiliaries as I later found out, circled me. "We're the Coast Guard," one of the youngest said. "We saved your life. You have neighbors who decided to call us about your late-night swimming adventure." "Not the best idea, sir." When I went to bed that night, I thought of the face I had seen during the conflict in the ocean. The eyes embedded themselves upon my consciousness. I knew I had seen the face before. I closed my eyes and tried to recall from where. It came to me as a sudden vision. I met him a year ago. He was still alive back then. His name was Dean Curson. He had been a ranked member, one of ours. He wasn't known for being anything much more than a street soldier, not a big earner like me. One day the boss called me into his office. He had a sit down with me and told me Dean was actually in a relationship with the boss's year-old niece. Dean was twice her age. Dean had also allegedly raised his hand to her. That was when the boss decided Dean's fate. I went out drinking with Dean, making it look as though it was business as usual. I told him I would drive him home. Once he was in the back seat of my Cadillac, I hit them over the head with a billy club. Once I knocked him out, I tied him up. I drove him to the shore where a boat was waiting for me. I dragged him onto the deck and steered the boat miles away from civilization. I pulled out my pistol and aimed at his head after I sat him up. "You should have never messed with Adelina," I said. He rolled his eyes in the back of his head to think of some kind of response or an excuse. A plea for mercy. I squeezed the trigger. His brain matter hit the dark water. I tied concrete blocks to his feet and dumped him overboard. The tide consumed him. Dean was not the first or the last person I eliminated in the Mafia. I heard rumors that Adelina had come forward and said that she and Dean were never a couple. She elaborated and said it was a mean-spirited bit of gossip that they had even gotten together. If this is the case, it would make sense why Dean haunts me every single night. The accused coming back to collect vengeance is not unheard of in family stories. In all fairness, it is what I would do if I were him in the next life. I will wait on the balcony every night and whisper how sorry I am until he leaves me alone. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe.